This just in, the woman accused of zipping up her boyfriend in a suitcase, killing him, sends a handwritten letter to the judge who sentenced her to life in prison. Sarah Boone is accusing that judge of being biased. Fox 35's Marlisa Goldsmith is joining us live here in the studio now. So, Marlisa, you've been going through that 28-page letter. What does it say?
Well, Luann, she's saying a lot of things in it, including she's the victim. Sarah Boone was just sentenced last week to life in prison for zipping her boyfriend up in a suitcase and murdering him. She took the stand during her sentencing, pleading for a lesser sentence. Boone asked for forgiveness and claimed she was the victim of abuse. But Judge Michael Kraynick sentenced Boone to the maximum punishment, life behind bars. Today, Boone sent the judge.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and can will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have them present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any questionings if you wish. All right. You good, dude?
Hello, hello. Here we are. It is 12/11 of 2024. It is 8:15 p.m. and Christmas came early. I was informed that one Sarah Boone sent a 28-page letter to our very own Judge Kraynick. I would like to go over that with you guys today. I am going to try to channel my inner Boone as much as I can, if you folks would allow me to hang out with you and do that. Let's see what we got. Everybody should be able to see that on the screen. It's not much of a secret that she's probably going to act a fool. Now, she did write in her lovely handwriting and in her speech pattern. I will try to do my best to do it justice. But mostly, I just want to get this 28-page letter out here and see what it is that she has to say uh, after her sentencing. Let's go here. Yep. All right, December 6th of 2024. 20 CF 2603A0, Mr. Michael Kraynick. This was 12/11/2024 at 12:50 p.m. It was filed in the office by Tiffany M. Russell, the clerk circuit court, Orange County. In my previous video on episode 6, I showed you guys how to get into all of these records for Sarah Boone. So if you would like to find this for yourself or to read it for yourself or post it on your own page, go check out number 6 in the series for Sarah Boone's inmate notes. All right, I have my water. I have my chapstick. I have my nugget. All right, there we go. Mr. Michael Kraynick, I'm in closing, please. My complete statement to you and the world as I partially read during my sentencing hearing. By my reserving particular parts of my very true and meaningful statement, I was hoping to have been graced with your forgiveness, understanding, and consideration in any level or degree. For me, unfortunately, and regardless of when I had, or excuse me, and regardless of who I had speak on my behalf, or the number of, your ignorant mind was already made up. Starting out strong, Sarah, aren't you? By your clear error and full blown unfair bias against me since your involvement in my crucible case as a whole. Crucible case, Sarah? Maybe crucial case? I have been unsuccessful in receiving anything from you as a supposed fair and neutral judge, except for your wish that I spend the rest of my life in prison. Please know and always remember, Mr. Kraynick, I forgive you. Still and sincerely, please understand also the judge, according to Cicero, is never to lose sight that he is simply a man and that he cannot exceed the power given to him by his own mission. That not only power, but public confidence has been given to him, that he ought always very seriously to attend not to his wishes, but to the requisitions of law, of justice, and religion. Oh, I'm grumbling. I'm already grumbling. Only 2 pages in and I'm grumbling. I am excited in my appeal, which speaks for itself. My case law as well, in which I am extremely proud to have achieved and will continue doing so now that I am no longer in your corrupt court and free from your malevolent judicial grip. Sarah Boone versus State of Florida. This chick. I also have added to my statement as a result of your blindness and impartiality. Foremost, your disgust in me as being an outspoken woman, determined defendant, and proactive client, hoping that next time you put on your listening ears and do not unfairly oppress the next as you have so blatantly done me. You will never admit your many judicial errors, nor will the prosecutors theirs, and I will never admit to what you have wrongfully accused me of and judged me as. I am not a murderer. I am a survivor. Sarah Boone. Black robe disease, arrogance in a judge, a slang term for a judge that flaunts judicial power and dominates proceedings at the expense of the dispensation of justice. Impartiality is the first duty of a judge. Before he gives an opinion or sits in judgment in a cause, he ought to be certain and absolute that he has no bias for or against either of the parties. If he has any interest, even the most slightest, in the cause, he is disqualified from sitting as a judge, and when aware of such interest, ought to lawfully and justly refuse to sit on a case. The delicacy which characterizes the judges in this country generally forbids their sitting in such a cause. Salad, word salad. The judge must not only be impartial, but must also follow and properly enforce the law, not abuse. He is bound to declare what law is and not make it. He is bound to declare what law is and not make it. Be not an arbitrator, but an interpreter of the law. It is their duty to be patient in the investigation of the case, understand circumstances and difficulties by all parties, careful in considering parts of a case in whole, and decent in judgment. Apparently, that came from a law dictionary, a 2012 edition. But at the risk of practicing judicial centricism, is that what that says? Let me look that word up, but new to me. Judicial centrism. It's not the word centricism isn't new to me, but the way judicial activism exercises the power of judicial review. Not sure she's using the word properly, but judicial centrinism. Judicial centrinism is not a defined term, but here's some information about judicial restraint and judicial activism, which are related concepts. Okay, let's just see what she has to say. If we have to elaborate in that judicial activism term, then we will go back to that. But at the risk of practicing judicial centricism, a word I have coined. Oh, okay. But at the risk of practicing judicial centricism, a word I have coined in this presentation. Others have called it black robe disease. Whether he was correct or not in my behavior, it is widely accepted that judicial behavior affects the jury. Murray Ritchell, The Simpson Trial in 1996. And then there is the worst of judicial ailments, the black robe disease, which is otherwise known as arrogance. Lynn Tolan, A Practical Guide to Becoming an Emotional Genius, 2007. Keep trying. Keep trying, Sarah. Trial judges are affirmatively. She's frustrating me. And so therefore I cannot read. That's my excuse. That's my excuse, okay? Trial judges are affirmatively charged with securing a fair trial and must intervene to must intervene something to that end when necessary. Brown versus Walter. I guess I could look that up, but I'd rather just whatever. That duty encompasses not only the avoidance of error before it occurs, but the fair correction of error that may have occurred earlier in a proceeding. You're citing all of this case law. You're annoying. I want to know what it is that you think. In the instant case, the trial judge did not analyze the evidence he added to it, dealing with a mere mannerism of the accused in giving testimony. The judge put his own experience with all the weight that could be attached to it in the scale against the accused. Oh, they're going to make me say this name. I'm going to butcher this. I've heard people I've heard people getting upset about the way she said it. Pronunciation. Let's see. Let's see if I can hear what it says. Come on now. Come on. Kent Sukuroi. Kent Sukuroi. Okay. I'll try not to butcher that anyway. Kintsukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintsukuroi. In my wisdom, and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Judge Wooten and Kraynick, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, in defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second degree murder forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Sleep because I had to go to work. What? Well, that's page one. Why is that out of order? One, three, two. Okay, we'll go here. Go here and then go back up. It looks like one is out of order. So this is page three. She wrote page two. Got to give her that. At least she knows. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived, though to be so gold, but an act of grace humility, and considerable self compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter, as the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment. This is forgiveness. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My gold begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work on my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ruining his entire body, running his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all the doors, and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed, for terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated, dead bodies in the pond, or scrape the remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing them across the room because they were trying to protect me, for threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all the bruises from George beating me, like all the times their father beat their mother. For all the drunken rages and fistfights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartment during hunting expeditions after I escaped. During hunting expeditions. So George is hunting you. For drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me two black eyes and a bloody nose, for making me experience what it is to be sodomized, threatening to kill my friend and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece, for threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job, for holding me hostage on weekends. My son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a a bat? No, a butcher knife. I'm sorry. And a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever been being arrested and after today, prison. For beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe, for having me experience what it means to see stars, like in the cartoons where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, many times. dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him, for taking my car, driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school, foremost, me to work, and he to his batterer's intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him, for causing me so much trauma and pain mentally, physically, emotionally. I had to be hospitalized more than once, for destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer, scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying so many times to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his two ex wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was, capable of, and has done in the past, his history of violence, and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Pharrell Torres, maybe? Pharrell Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. Oh, you are. I remember all of this the day you read it, and it's no less vile now that I am reading it, and it's maddening. His family was re victimized by you, allowing yourself to go to court instead of taking a plea deal. They were re victimized every single day they sat in that courtroom and had to listen to how their son, their brother, their father, their uncle died in a suitcase after a night of hide and go seek and immense amount of drinking. You're vile, and you're exactly where you need to be. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves, while quiet and comfortable in bed at night, the uneasy question: what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us, and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey, waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me, being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially my broadcasting especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all the media tycoons for not having a life of their own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness and prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and other mis- from mine and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and keyboards. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed in my case. Still, no one knows me. My gold also runs deep for my prior attorneys, Mauricio Padilla, who sold me the world with empty promises, then abandoned his responsibilities as my attorney after taking 2.5 years of my life when finally realizing he was in over his head, all while hoarding JAC dollars to fund his staycations with his family when in town from Miami, for having resources ready and available, not allowing me, the client, to ever utilize, which could have greatly progressed my case and perhaps concluded only for him to decide water parks, fine dining, and choice hotels were more important and on the JAC's dime. I forgive Frank J. Bankowitz for committing perjury to the judge and on court record about my attempts to be a proactive defendant and client, inquiring about my discovery, then convince, trying to communicate with no answers or correspondence in any manner for 1 full year and 2 months before I was able to finally meet with him in the courtroom, only to receive his motion to withdraw. Frank J. Bankowitz is forgiven for his greed in taking $15,000 from the JAC, who honorably who honorably aid indigent defendants as myself for taking advantage of and robbing the justice system by lying and avoiding clients, taking their money and the JACs. Winston A. Winston E. Hobson receives my forgiveness, who also unethically perjured himself to the judge and on court record about all the progress and attorney work he did in my case for the 2 months he was court appointed as for his allegations of my supposed unethical request, which meant me asking about my discovery and trying to have him file a motion for my lawful inclusion to pretrial conference cited under FRCP discovery rules. I wanted to be included in my case and no progress from being excluded by Bankowitz and no progress from being excluded by Bankowitz and Padilla over 3 years prior. Forgiveness also in telling me he would return in a week with my discovery, only to receive his motion to withdraw. In the meantime, still not receiving my discovery, and I filing my own motion asking me to go to all motion. Uh, okay, discover still not receiving my discovery, and I filing my own motion asking Abling? Oh my gosh, I just had it to go to all of my hearings, including my pre-trials. I think it says asking. Filing my own motion asking me to go to all my hearings, including pre-trials. Continued forgiveness in his greed and selfish intentions. Also for robbing the JAC indigent defendants of 15,000 more for nothing, justifying any work he really did do in the handful of days he represented me as my attorney. Finally, and with all my gold received from this one, I forgive Patricia Cashman for her mean, snotty, egotistical attitude and not listening or caring that I finally received my discovery. I kept asking for her I kept asking her, for which she fully withheld from me, citing her ridiculous, untrue reasons, was because I saw with my first attorney 4 years prior, and while she being my present at that time attorney, I saw not one page of or any digital evidence of my discovery she prohibited me from seeing. Patricia Cashman is also forgiven for admitting I had a right to a bond I asked her for so I could actually utilize one of my rights as opposed to having them always violated as prior and still ongoing. Then her deterrence of all my opportunities to do so. For all her lies, condescending gross, unnecessary arguments and anger that I asked any questions and wanted to understand, for her doing nothing other than give me an even harder time and request transcripts, then brazenly lie for over 16,000 for doing so, also from the precious resources provided from the JAC. I forgive Patricia Cashman for being a liar and a bully. We're on page 15. Let me get a drink. What do we think so far? Is it everything you thought it would be? Forgiveness for all those who did not include me to receive my 15,000 share I worked for when Judge Kraynick forced me to be my own attorney to represent myself as pro se. I actually and finally got my own discovery almost 5 years later, filed motions, all prior should have done, making them the most expensive motions ever at over $46,000 between the three prior attorneys. Frank J. Bankowitz, Walter E. Hobson, Patricia A. Cashman. Would they have done so when supposedly representing me? The motions would have been priceless for the proper use of the JAC funds toward ethics, professionalism, honesty, and freedom. I honorably utilized my JAC resources and mentorship as a proactive indigent defendant, avidly defending myself against the liars, thieves, and real villains in my criminal case. Who really is the criminal? The JAC can hopefully include their forgiveness for them also. Judge Wooten and Kraynick, I have great forgiveness for also in not protecting me, in listening to my valid request for judicial intervention so I could properly and fairly defend myself against any charges or against my charges. Instead, I had to defend myself against the attorneys, all appointed by the judge and court, against their lies and exaggerations, reasons unjustifiable why they were really creeping away from the battlefield and abandoning their professional duty as my attorney. Judge Kraynick, I forgive you for not giving me any opportunity to stand at your pulpit, to stand at all, to explain the real, truthful side of the story. I believe if the justice system, including yourself, would and should have done any vital homework on the already almost see through attorneys from being spread so thin and simply sending an email to care about their present workload number of clients, trial schedules already in place before throwing another inmate defendant unknowingly unknowing client on the heaping unimportant pile of warm bodies, more taxpayer dollars could be conserved and less time consumed and wasted for everyone, regardless of what part they play in the supposed system of justice. My forgives this bitch is insufferable. You have been sentenced, ma'am, and your appeals will probably be denied, ma'am, and your motion for a new trial was already denied. My forgiveness is deepened for taking even greater time of mine away, years, by not caring to ask me anything about anything to understand, so you could justly render your life defining judgments and withhold anyone any more bias and prejudice by not caring to ask me anything about anything to understand, so you could justly render your life defining judgments and without anyone any more bias and prejudice. Foremost, foremost, 17 pages in, Judge Kraynick, I forgive you for kicking me when I was down and choking the life out of my constitutional amendments, most profoundly, my right to counsel. As a result of my wholehearted list, wait, what in the God? Most profoundly, my sixth right to counsel. What? As a result of my wholehearted use of my first right to free speech in being my own advocate, since no one else would be, and received a paycheck for, in all of my free speech experience, ri- in the, in all of my free speech experience driven letters only for remedy in any collaboration, inclusion, receiving my discovery as an inmate, dependent and client, defendant. It looks like dependent, looks like a defendant and client, not removal of any attorneys to cause more delays or any reason or excuse you may try to force on me and have already inappropriately accused me of doing prior with your heavily insinuated strategies of ruin to try and deflect the glaring red flags, disappointments, and true crime in and of the justice system. To this day and all forward, I do not forfeit my rights, any of them, ever, especially my right to be bold, outspoken, and right in my real life experiences with the legal and justice systems. You weren't there, Judge Kraynick, in anything, no meetings, phone calls, visits, and still took my rights and oppressed harder. I must now defend myself against you, praying you do not care too late as all the others, and retaliate further against me as a still proud citizen of the United States of America, of my America, of my America, the United States of my America. Hmm. Is that what that says? Does it say my America right here? Or of hey America, you know? It looks like my M-Y. I don't know. I could be wrong. Retaliate further against me as a still proud citizen of the United States of my America and freely, excitedly using my God given rights to still try and defend myself, to stand all the way up for you to remove my freedom altogether by allowing and approving my stab wound, bloody body parts, bumps, bruises, and all the rest of the beatings I endured. I hope you can finally see and understand just some of the pain from the extreme difficulties, obstacles, and unfairness, especially in my due process, you have added in my criminal case, and life as an inmate, defendant, and client. All is forgiven. For Detectives Kepsel and Lowen, I forgive their demonization, lies, blacklisting, coercion, law breaking, solicitation of my case before I even arrive at the corrections department to be booked and fingerprinted. This can be seen in my unbeknownst interrogation video where I asked what they are doing, what all the pinging was Oh, what all the pinging was during the texting swarm while I naively sat there waiting to be arrested, which they knew would happen the day before, for Kepsel, for bald face lying on the stand to the judge and court on record. She didn't tell me to come to the station to pick up my phone. Why else would I go? I didn't even know about the surprise interrogation. I forgive them for also lying how the news showed up to record my walk of shame, handcuffed and confused on camera. I forgive them for trying to make me lose from the beginning by starting the unquenchable wildfire of sensationalism and distortion, ignorant hate, defamation, and greed by unlawfully broadcasting who they wanted the world to think I was by their schemes, learned lessons, and fraudulent strategies from the school of manipulation and taking advantage. How much did they make off of me and still are for calling it in? Then removing the certain to expose their personally twisted murdering monster. What? How much did they make off of me and still are for calling it in? Then removing the certain removing the curtain. Oh Lord. God, EO, get it together. 19 pages in, she's infuriating, so forgive me. How much did they make off of me and still are for calling it in, then removing the curtain to expose their personally twisted murdering monster? Also, my forgiveness and greater gold comes from wondering why nothing viable in my defense was taken from my townhome, aka the crime scene, to aid in my truth, such as the butcher knife, five-pronged garden claw or hammer under the table, together outside where George had easy access for use if I tried to leave or call for help while being held against my will during his rageful binges, or my bloody pillowcases, stained from me being backhanded because I hid the magnum-sized bottle of vodka from him. Why weren't any crime scene photos taken of holes patched in walls and doors, some doors missing knobs and all locks George removed, cracked windows, broken furniture, obvious unnatural destruction in my townhome? How and why were those missed, uncared about, or not questioned so I could explain some of my temor? It makes no difference. All is forgiven. Prosecutors, Mr. J. and Mr. Cacciatore, my forgiveness is also extended for your inappropriate attributed motives, for having to go through years of my pictures, videos, text to erroneously piece together your deceitful, damning version of what really happened. Does that say damning? I think it does. Piece together your deceitful, damning version of what really happened and who I am. After so much availability and for so long, you were finally able to make the circle fit into the square. I forgive your antics, theatrics, ludicrous comments to make sure the world got their money's worth while watching with ignorant pitchforks and burning torches, hoping for the best from you, which is my worst. Instead of dropping the mic, Mr. J, you dropped the bat. You dropped the bat or you dropped the hat? It would make sense to say, Mr. J, you dropped the hat. For the yelling, finger pointing, and intense undermining. Okay, is this but like after her medication or something? Like or up here, do you see this? How her writing got all erratic all of a sudden, and she's like either mad or she's tired or I don't know. We're 21 pages in. I don't know how long it took her to write all of this. For the yelling, finger pointing, and intense undermining to force your theatricals and fantastics on the jury by using imaginary space adventures and fictional characters to blind and bedazzle them with your far, far away from the truth dramatizations. Okay, that was a little wild. I'm all of your pieced together productions. I forgive you most for never seeing the light in people, their human goodness, humor, and big hearts. You wake up to seek out the opposite, to condemn, to take lives in your own way. See the good that does exist in all of us inherently and unforced, even as the proud Mr. J stated. What? 17, 18. See the good that does exist in all of us inherently and unforced, even as the proud Mr. J stated, the kicked dog that bites. Mr. J, who kicked the dog in the first place. In my wisdom, it's usually best to leave sleeping dogs lie, then they don't bite. My gold goes out to the jury for not understanding my cracks, from being blinded from the injustice and malpractice in all of the judicial malpractice, bro. Malpractice in all of the judicial and prosecutorial errors, the very apparent violations of my constitutional rights during my case and entire trial, which caused mass confusion and dysfunction. I forgive the jury truly for being weary from this confusion and dysfunction. Also, from being hungry and tired and wanting to go home to their families after being away from in full capacity for 2 full weeks. I understand. From this and their brash, misguided, corrupted decision, I was wrongfully judged a murderer instead of a survivor. For this, all is forgiven. For this, I can still survive and stand tall, having an even greater, the greatest opportunity to finally be understood in the Supreme Court for my appeal. I didn't lose. God just wanted me to win in a different way, freedom and forgiveness. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, for being hopeless, desperate, simple minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home, and car. Having 2020 hindsight, thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time, I knew if not the great possibility I would be ended, as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, no, he may become, I still loved, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks. Also, we made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am endlessly and that I never stopped loving him in all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughter apologizing and asking for their forgiveness, but due to fear that my life or son's would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him. Seeing my stab wound every day, especially, if truly reminds me all. I really did live through. George haunts me. He's everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss him, his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he's with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I did not mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Kraynick. To the entire planet, forgive me. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration, for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profound and ceaseless. Allow my allow me please to brush off the allow me please to brush off the something. I cannot decipher that word. Wipe the blood off my face and fix I the cuts in my skin. Okay. Brush off the muck. Oh Lord. Allow me please to brush off the muck, wipe the blood of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding what really happened and for how long, for second chances, repentance, and redemption, to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence, as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There's always hope. You can survive. In my soft spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 117. All encompassing, protect the abused. Sarah Boone, 12/2/2024. And there we have it. That is the letter. What do you guys think about that? Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about this reading. Was it justified? Everything that she said? Was there anything that she said was justified? Do you feel like she really was in love with George? Do you feel like there's any forgiveness to be found in the family after everything that they've had to be uh, exposed to? Everything they had to see? Do you think it's social media's fault that she was sentenced? And do you think the judge cares about her forgiveness to them now that the trial's over? You guys let me know what you think. As always, thank you for hanging with Hio.